Thank you again for such kindness for my little guy. I feel so connected when a congregation knows how to really love young people, and that is so the heart of Groton. You all embrace having young people at the center. Imagine if each of us had grown up knowing that kind of groundedness, to come to church and think, these people love me, they get me, they want me here, they understand when I struggle, and they build me up when I need support. It's really who you all are, and not every congregation is like that. It's really, really special. And I, at the risk of talking twice about my own little guy, he doesn't always leave my side to go off and do what he could do, and I think being able to have you all just loudly say, like, yes, we're with you, you can need what you need, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you again for being who you are. Once upon a time, a thief snuck into the room of a sleeping Buddhist monk. As the burglar rummaged about, the monk awoke. The startled thief ran into the snowy streets with the monk racing after him. "Please stop," the monk called, and the man finally did, realizing that his pursuer was no threat. "You'll need this," the monk gasped, handing the thief his own coat. "What do you mean?" the man asked. I saw that you dashed from my room into the cold without so much as a winter wrap, and I realized that I had both a woolen blanket and a coat." In reflecting on this implausible tale of sainthood, Professor of Natural Sciences and Humanities at the University of Wyoming, Jeffrey Lockwood, had this to say: "Well, I loved this story, but I forgot the details later on, and I remembered the essential events. Ordinary people can't be morally compelled to make such extraordinary sacrifices. But for whatever reason, perhaps the sheer absurdity of such unconditional altruism, this parable stuck with me," he said. "It rattled around in my skeptical mind until the day my wife played the role of the Buddhist monk." And then he says, "Nan and I headed into the mountains for a day of skiing with our children, who were 4 and 6 at the time. And in the chaos of packing up that morning, we had forgotten our daughter's mittens. The wind was whipping and mercury hovered in the teens, so no mittens meant no skiing. But for Nan, the solution was as obvious as it was simple. She always wore 2 pairs of socks, so she removed the outer layer and pulled them over Erin's hands. The problem was solved, and we headed down the trail. I found her approach rather clever, the sort of practical, motherly thinking that often eludes my analytical mind, but hardly heroic. However, the bitter cold and the woolen warmth evoked the parable of the monk's coat. Among the snow-hushed pines, I finally remembered how the dialogue ended. He had forgotten the rest of the story when the monk caught up with the thief. "Well, I don't understand," the thief said. And the monk replied, "It is simple. You have nothing at all to keep you warm," the monk said. "But you are a fool to give away your coat, leaving you with only a blanket," the man replied, reaching for the garment. "Well, if I had 2 gloves on one hand and none on the other, would I be a fool to put one of them on my bare hand?" the monk asked. And the man said nothing, and took the coat and hurried down the street. When we are not alienated, Lockwood said, when love draws us into the suffering of others, when we see our happiness entwined in their well-being, then generosity is neither foolish nor heroic. It is the simplest, most obvious choice. 2 weeks back, People gathered around screens and big screens and anything they could feast their eyes upon as the Artemis II mission set 4 astronauts in motion on a 10-day journey around the moon. And wasn't it just the most wonderful thing to at last see good reporting and truth and joy and something to be so decently, humanly excited about, something seemingly impossible that came to be because people put their minds to work and teamed up over many, many years, and something really creative and almost impossible came to happen. Wasn't that just so, reassuring? It's so quiet in here. Wasn't it reassuring? Yes. Okay, great. All right, you're with me. Okay. I thought I was the only one, but I was at a little program where Jesse and some UU kids gathered around someone's little cell phone, and they had their noses in close as the red and white parachutes came out and the thing landed in the water. And the shriek of joy from those little beings was just, it filled my heart for them to find that hope and that joy in something the world was quite unified about, bringing people home safe. It was such a good moment. The Orion spacecraft successfully traveled farther than any humans have gone before, circling the far side of the moon and returning safely to Earth. And along the way, they sent back remarkable images, new views of the lunar surface, stark and shadowed, familiar but newly framed images of the Earth rising in the distance, photographs that remind us just how teeny tiny, small, and bright our planet appears against the vastness of space, suspended in darkness, with only a thin layer of atmosphere holding everything we know and love. There will be so many more scientific insights to come, and engineers and researchers will spend years learning from what this mission made possible. But what many people noticed right away was something less technical and more human, the way the astronauts talked about what they had experienced. In the first public interview conducted right after their return, one astronaut commented how bizarre it was to have their crewmates sitting more than a few feet away from them, which prompted laughter and a quick scooting nearer of the seats. The Orion has about 9 square meters of habitable volume, roughly equivalent to the space inside 2 minivans. The 4 astronauts within reflected about their friendship and bond in this way. You heard this as our opening words this morning. A crew is inescapably, beautifully, dutifully linked, said Christine Cook. It's a group that is in it all the time, no matter what. And she added that when she looked at Earth from the neighborhood of the moon, it was just this lifeboat hanging undisturbingly in the universe. Planet Earth, she said, you are a crew. And Victor Glover added, in all of this emptiness, you have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist in together. And Reed Weissman said, before you launch, it feels like it's the greatest dream on Earth to go to space, and when you're out there, you just want to get back to your families and friends. It's a special thing to be human, he said, and it's a special thing to be on planet Earth. So when this crew returned, they didn't focus first on records or milestones. They spoke about perspective and about how from 250,000 miles away, borders disappear. Weather systems swirl across continents uninterrupted, and the planet looks whole and finite and unexpectedly fragile. There is a name for this kind of experience, the overview effect. And it describes a cognitive and emotional shift reported by many astronauts who see Earth from space. They often speak of a deep sense of awe, but also something more lasting than that, a change in how they understand themselves in relation to others. Researchers describe several common elements of this overview effect. There is the initial sense of wonder at the planet's beauty and fragility, and then a shift in perspective where political and geographical divisions just melt away, and Earth is seen as one blue boat home, one shared place to be. And then many astronauts describe this strong feeling of interconnectedness, a recognition that all life is linked. That awareness often brings with it a heightened sense of responsibility for the environment and a desire to protect what suddenly feels both small and irreplaceable. And just as strikingly, many report a kind of self-transcendence, a quieting of ego, a reduced focus on individual concerns alongside a greater sense of belonging to something larger, the nature of sharing the coat, as the Buddhist story this morning reminds us, the nature of leaving an empty chair because you can remember that no one should ever be outside the circle of love and respect. NASA Chief Bill Nelson asked the Artemis II crew to describe their mission in one word. 4 astronauts, 4 answers, and all of them somehow said the same thing: humility. So while the mission itself pushed the boundaries of distance and exploration, what stayed with the astronauts and what they tried to put into words afterward was not just what they saw, but how it changed the way that they saw. When I was a child, my family didn't go on vacation trips, really. We didn't take airplanes and do fancy things, but we did go camping in the summer. And the stars were so bright and so quiet, and Vermont was just such a big expanse of endless blackness with pinnacles of light flickering, and ever so now and again some star would shoot across the night sky, and the crickets were so loud, and the night air was so warm and so close. Anyone here like a camper, love camping? Yeah, oh, it's so good. Walking beside my younger sister along the dirt road back to our tent after brushing our teeth, we would find ourselves whispering so as to preserve the perfection of feeling so present, so just right. We knew our place in the family of things, as Mary Oliver would say. 2 tiny human beings holding hands beneath a blanket of shimmering stars. So we each have our own experiences of this smallness and bigness, both at once. Maybe you've stood in a darkened field aglow with fireflies, or maybe you've been to the symphony when the first notes begin and you can just almost start to cry for that feeling of like, oh my gosh, how many thousands of hours did these folks practice to make that sound come out just perfect like that? 100 instruments thrumming as one, like those peepers that have started coming out this spring. You know when you felt this emotion on the spectrum of surprise called awe. Awe as in the true meaning of the word awesome. Awe is surprise that's stirred by something unfathomably vast or complex, and we can't quite believe it even as we stand before it. Nature is the most common awe trigger, but intricate design or extraordinary skill or admirable integrity and remarkable ideas also inspire awe. Like all surprises, awe leads us to stop and to wonder and shift our perspective and long to share our experiences with others. Researchers have found that simply watching awe-inspiring nature videos creates this shift, and it has been known to lead participants to feel that time is slowing down. Psychologists have nicknamed this time stretching phenomenon as the extended now. And this extended now feels longer than the usual fragment of a moment. One Sunday in church recently, Jesse and his friends watched a short clip of monarch butterfly migration. Have you guys seen that? There are these giant, blobs. There's probably some word for it, like a conglomerate mass or mob of these thousands and thousands of butterflies that group like grape clusters on trees. And they hang down and they're fluttering all at the same time, but they're not disturbing each other. They're all clumped and grouped and moving together as one. Only these bundles are the size of refrigerators. And the kids weren't even at first sure what these masses were, but the camera zoomed in, and this camera looked like a hummingbird, so it didn't scare away the butterflies. And it zoomed in closer and closer, and there was a gasp in the room as the kids realized what on earth they were seeing. Butterflies, they all said, as one voice. And then the blobs began to drip down, and the outermost and bottommost butterflies toppled off and began to flit away. And the whole sky was alive with all these butterflies, not bumping each other, just existing as sort of one microorganism, but really thousands of them. And the kids just had their mouths open. I could see them leaning forward and saying, "Wow, so many of them." And research has shown that this experience of awe often leads to participants in this kind of a study being more patient and more helpful. There's like a direct cause and effect there. Helping then increases happiness. And so awe doesn't just feel awesome because it is like a personal felt sense. It also improves one's quality of life, improves the quality of other people's lives, and it's this giant microorganism of helpers helping others and creating more happiness, more functionality, more possibility together. So this group that was gathered in the church basement, which had previously been sort of rowdy and even kind of cynical about what boring thing they would be up to, they headed out happily to decorate pots and plant milkweed because milkweed would feed the butterflies. They were motivated by the sense of interconnectedness to bring more food and sort of happiness to the butterflies who would get to eat. As citizens of a time-starved, disconnected, and increasingly harsh world, we tell ourselves that there isn't space enough for awe, that there is too much to do and too much to carry. But it can work the other way around. Even a brief encounter with awe can interrupt that urgency. It can widen our sense of time, soften what has become rigid in us, and remind us that the story is so much larger than fear. Think about those people for the 300 years back who said, "Yes, I will give to the stewardship drive." Well, this church wouldn't even be here, except all those people said yes to creating something that could exist as a microorganism on into the future beyond them and their children, their children's children. Sometimes I think about if somebody in this pew, if you could sit on the lap of the person who sat before it in the pew, and all the other people who'd ever sat in the pew before you, well, we'd be like those conglomerate butterfly masses, refrigerator size, stretching far off towards the moon itself. And for a moment, we are not only reacting then to the world as it is, but remembering the world as it could be and our place within it. And if we take seriously what the astronauts describe, that sense that from a distance there are no borders, only one shared and fragile home, then it asks something of us here on the ground. It asks us how we will treat those who arrive at our door as strangers. How will we treat immigrants in our communities? How will we respond when ICE snatches our neighbors, our family members, our friends, or someone we don't know yet? It brings to mind the classroom teacher in our children's story this morning, who turned a moment of childhood awakening about racism into a lifelong commitment to welcoming the next person to arrive. Because the truth is, on this small and luminous planet, our blue boat home drifting through space, none of us is really an outsider ever. We are all, in one way or another, temporary travelers dependent on one another for warmth, for welcome, and for life itself. As the book of Hebrews reminds us, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for in doing so, some have entertained angels unawares. To live this way is to remember that the land we inhabit is not something that we own, but something we are entrusted with for a time. We are blessed beyond all measure to have ever been born, and every breath is a gift. Every ocean, every sunset, every wind farm and wild mare is part of that gift. Every stranger we meet is part of it too. There is nothing to conquer or prove. And there is no 27 million 10-minute ride into space for a politician or anyone else that can change the perspective of someone who cannot see what is already here before us. But we, the citizens of the earth, in towns and forests and mountains and cities, share this fragile existence day by day, those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear. It is our responsibility to tend and to protect all life, knowing we can take nothing with us when we die. Those who can keep caring, keep trying, keep reaching for one another must do so. Despite all that is difficult in this world, it is our duty, and perhaps our only real hope, to help shape a world where all life is sustainable. Humility is not easy, but here we are, after all, one crew. Let us do this tending and repairing for those who come after us, so that others may inherit not only survival, but safety and health and a place to belong. In this vast and sheltering universe, this shared earth is our sacred home. May it be so, and amen.